In just a few days, 800,000 Americans, many of them still on the job, will go without another paycheck. Others who rely on the work they do will have to go without vital government services. The federal court system is running out of money. The FBI Agents Association says the Bureau has lost several informants in terrorism investigations. Airports are backing up because unpaid TSA screeners are calling in sick and working other jobs to make ends meet. CNN has obtained a TSA internal email asking screeners at slow airports to move to busier locations harder hit by the sickouts. Now, keep it honest, before we talk about any of the late developments on day 32 of the government shutdown, before we hear from President Trump or Senator Elizabeth Warren, who joins us tonight, I want you to hear from some of those 800,000 men and women who work for all of us.
How many of you are running out of money? Raise your hand. All of you.
I don't know how I'm going to pay the $250 a month for his medication. My husband and I have put ourselves on a macaroni and cheese and grilled cheese sandwich diet, so therefore the kids can eat.
Today, Senate Republicans introduced a bill along the lines of what President Trump is demanding, including money for a border wall, temporary protection for some but not all DACA kids, and sharp new restrictions on lawful asylum seekers. The vote on it could come Thursday, a day before payday. Senators may also vote Thursday on a Democratic bill to reopen the government temporarily, but not fund a wall. Neither measure is expected to pass, but a lot could change in the next 2 days. However, keep it honest, some things will likely not change. One is that people overwhelmingly blame the president over the Democrats for the shutdown, 55 to 32% in recent CNN polling. Two, as much as the president has lately tried to pin the blame elsewhere, it appears that the people in that poll took him at his word when he said this.
I am proud to shut down the government for border security. I will take the mantle. I will be the one to shut it down. I'm not going to blame you for it. The last time you shut it down, it didn't work. I will take the mantle of shutting down. And I'm going to shut it down for border security. Believe you.
In other words, the buck stops with him, except, as you know, he doesn't really believe that.
Does the buck stop with you over this shutdown?
The buck stops with everybody.
Okay, so the buck doesn't stop with him. Hey, it's only $1 after all. Anyway, the president has made it clear, though, that what he shut the government down for, his wall, is non-negotiable. But even that's open to question. As our political reporters and analysts have been saying for weeks in this program, Republican lawmakers may be leery of fully committing to any kind of deal-making because they don't fully trust the president will have their backs. They remember the deal he backed out of at the last minute when right-wing talk show personalities objected to it. They remember when he said the buck stops with everyone. They may even remember that televised session a year ago when he told a stunned Senator Dianne Feinstein that he would like to pass a clean bill to protect DACA kids first and would later, quote, take all the heat you want to give me, unquote, for a comprehensive immigration bill. Now, minutes after he said what he said to Senator Feinstein, a Republican lawmaker with cameras rolling pulled him in the opposite direction. Then the president said essentially he'd be good with just about anything.
This group comes back, hopefully with an agreement. This group and others from the Senate, from the House, comes back with an agreement. I'm signing it. I mean, I will be signing it. I'm not going to say, oh, gee, I want this or I want that. I'll be signing it because I have a lot of confidence in the people in this room that you're going to come out with something really good.
Well, that's not how it panned out a year ago, and he seems far less accommodating now, but you get the point that it's hard to tell what ultimately this president wants. Is it building a wall? Perhaps. He certainly promised that. Then again, he also promised that taxpayers would not pay for it. Now he's shutting down the government until they do. He said he'd take the heat. He didn't. He said he'd take the mantle. He hasn't. He said a lot of things, and you can agree or disagree with any, all, or none of it and still wonder where he really stands and how the shutdown will really end. More now on where things stand from CNN's Jim Acosta joins us from the White House. So where do things stand right now?
It's a really good question, Anderson. Our folks up on Capitol Hill tell us that there are going to be some competing bills up for votes later on this week. Looks like Thursday, one which is coming from the Republican side, Mitch McConnell, is essentially the president's plan to fund the wall down on the border and reopen the government. There's a Democratic plan that's essentially the one that's coming out of the House that would reopen the government. Both of these would do it for a brief period of time, but it would not have funding for the president's border wall. Both of those bills are unlikely to pass. And at this point, it was interesting. Sarah Sanders, the White House press secretary, was talking to reporters. She didn't do it in the briefing room because we haven't had a briefing in more than a month, but she was doing it in the driveway here, and she did not rule out the possibility that the president could sign that bill. But I talked to a White House official just a short while ago who said, how likely is that Democratic bill actually going to get out of the Congress and over here to the president's desk? So that doesn't seem very likely either. And so what we're really staring at the prospect of, Anderson, is this shutdown grinding on, as we've been saying over and over again, with no end in sight.
Is there going to be a State of the Union address a week from now? I mean, do we know at this point?
The White House says they're moving forward with plans for a State of the Union up on Capitol Hill, just as if Nancy Pelosi, the House Speaker, had never essentially disinvited the president from giving that speech. At this point, Anderson, I just talked to a White House official who said there are lots of options on the table. Anything is possible, this official said, with some planning. That means that they would like to have that State of the Union speech up on Capitol Hill. They could also deliver one over here at the White House, although, as we saw with that border speech that the president did recently from the Oval Office, the president didn't like the way that turned out very much. There is also the idea floating around, and we understand from talking to White House officials that this is under discussion, that the president could actually hold a campaign-style rally outside of Washington to sort of drum up support for what he wants to do down on the border, or it could be a more subdued speech to supporters. So they're talking about all sorts of possibilities at this point, because this government shutdown has not been resolved, as you said, Anderson, affecting and impacting and hurting millions of Americans across the country.
Jim Acosta, thanks very much.